Hey guys, EckhartsLadder, and welcome to the first real video for my second channel, X2. From everyone who came from my main channel or just discovered me by accident, thank you for joining me. I am very glad to have you. As I'm sure most of you guys must know, I love science fiction, so I figured, hey, what better way to start out the channel than by listing and talking about the 5 greatest science fiction movies of all time. Now, of course, this list is purely my opinion, and I'm not going for most influential movies or most groundbreaking, most critically acclaimed, but just my favorite and the ones that I think personally are the best. So this probably isn't the same list you'd get if you talked to a director, went to film school, or met a film historian. I do just want to say it was extraordinarily difficult to narrow down this list. I mean, science fiction as a genre is really coming into its own, and there have been so many great, groundbreaking, truly memorable science fiction movies. In other words, if I didn't include your favorite, please don't be mad at me. And I do just want to take a second to acknowledge some of the honorable mentions. Examples of the movies I didn't include are 2001: A Space Odyssey, arguably the most important science fiction movie ever made, but not one of my favorites. I much prefer the book. I also didn't include Inception and Interstellar, the recent Christopher Nolan movies, which I really truly love and I think would probably make my top 10 or top 15 list. Nor did I include The Terminator, The Thing, Mad Max, Independence Day, and many, many others. And if you'd like to hear me talk about a movie, post down in the comments and I'll be sure to respond and we can have a conversation there. Just a couple of things before I get started. I've included a pretty loose definition of science fiction. We're not looking for necessarily a hard sci-fi movie here. Things that border on fantasy are totally fine. I've also tried to keep the list pretty diverse, and no franchise will be represented more than one time. So let's start off with number 5, a Hallmark animated film, Akira. Akira is not only one of the 5 greatest science fiction movies in my mind, but probably the greatest adult-oriented animated film. Created in 1988, Akira's standout is not its story, but its world building, its animation, and its sense of atmosphere. And it's truly a movie that needs close watching for you to get the whole experience. But when you do, I think you'll be surprised by the very stunning, but at times adult visuals, bizarre and often grotesque plot, and themes exploring childhood, friendship, and general loss of humanity. Akira is the only animated movie that makes this list, beating out other classics like The Iron Giant and Ghost in the Shell. Number 4 is the 1999 Wachowski film, The Matrix. A movie well known for not only its stunning special effects and action sequence, but also its mind-bending plot. Like Akira, The Matrix explores the meaning of humanity, while presenting what is in my mind one of the most interesting premises and plot devices in film history, the idea that we're all connected to some machine and that our reality is only a simulation. I think that The Matrix's cyberpunk world is one of the most interesting on this list, and I think even its sequels couldn't do it justice. I also think it's important to mention that The Matrix paved the way for other cerebral science fiction movies like the previously mentioned Inception. Number 3 is Alien, a movie which, although only coming out 2 years after Star Wars and based on a very common idea, managed to be exceedingly original. Alien is scary, on a conscious and a subconscious level. The design of the creature is brilliant, and the underlying tones of sexuality, body horror, and pregnancy horror are just really well done. It's a very patient horror movie, and one that combines atmosphere, design, dread, and gore, while evoking a darkness that is difficult to describe. The film's universe is also a lot of fun, and the Nostromo particularly has a dark, lived-in feel not at all dissimilar from Star Wars. And the space jockey, and particularly the xenomorph, would become icons of science fiction. In a stark contrast to most science fiction films of the era, including the film I keep mentioning, Star Wars, the film featured a woman who was, rather than a helpless victim, the true hero. This is important, especially in a time where many science fiction creators were trying to distance themselves from the genre's pulpy roots and be taken more seriously. On another note, science fiction and horror is one of my favorite combinations, and movies like The Thing, Event Horizon, The Terminator, and Invasion of the Body Snatchers are just some examples of great sci-fi horror classics. As is, of course, the more action-oriented sequel to Alien, Aliens. Number 2 is Blade Runner, an adaptation of the classic Phillip K Dick book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? This movie is worthy of the number 2 spot for several reasons, and the first is, of course, the atmosphere, from both, of course, the cinematography to the music by Vangelis. And I know that when I think of cyberpunk, I think of the rain-splattered neon and industrial orange sunlight of dystopian Los Angeles, accompanied, of course, by the film's soundtrack. Also important though is the film's discussion of humanity, creation, artificial intelligence, and of course what it means to be alive. The question of whether Deckard is a replicant, and perhaps more importantly, and on a deeper level, whether it really matters, is really interesting, and I think in some ways the film handles that question better than its source material. Of course, I would be remiss to not mention the great acting in the movie. Of course, Harrison Ford is one of the most notable science fiction actors of a generation, and the androids, and in particular Rutger Hauer, really bring an ironic humanity to the movie, which I think is important in any science fiction movie, but particularly one with the dystopian film noir feel of Blade Runner. All in all, I think objectively Blade Runner is not only one of the greatest science fiction movies ever, but one of the greatest films of all time. Number one may not be objectively the greatest movie of all time, but it's probably the most influential, and it's not only my favorite science fiction movie, but my favorite film period. Of course, it's Star Wars. Star Wars takes common themes from fantasy and science fiction and executes them wonderfully. Inspired by previous science fiction works like Flash Gordon, Star Wars has a wonderful, fun, and pulpy feel to it. The film somehow manages to create this unforgettable world while still being attractive to both adults and children. The heroes are immediately relatable, the villains are immediately fearsome, and the aliens, of course, are immediately awesome. Star Wars was truly groundbreaking in not only science fiction but film, and it helped pioneer the modern blockbuster and used special effects that blew people away and still managed to hold up really well. Billions of people, including, of course, myself, have fallen in love with Star Wars and the world created by George Lucas. And although the brand has suffered a few bumps along the way, the franchise now is stronger than ever. Anyways guys, thank you for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this list and that you're enjoying my new channel. Please let me know down in the comments which science fiction films you would have chosen for your top 5 list. Also, all of the franchises on this list are still alive in some respect. Star Wars, of course, is getting a sequel, as is Blade Runner and Alien. The Matrix and Akira are getting reboots or live action versions. Let me know in the annotation that's appearing in the top right corner right now which one you're most excited for. Anyways guys, thank you for watching. I hope to see you soon, and of course, for more Star Wars content, check out my main channel, EckhartsLadder, and hey, as always, may the Force be with you.